Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia, and it's Week 13 and Monday. You know what that means? It's waiver wire time. That's right. It's time to hit the waiver wire, trying to add some guys. Maybe we'll drop a few as well. And to help us break it all down is my good friend, Derek Brown, DBro, the king of bros, and our own Tera Roberts, who you know from our YouTube channel, doing all the amazing work in the short form videos. She's there answering your questions from 12 to 1, giving me a break every Sunday on the YouTube channel. Tera, thank you so much for joining us today. Follow her because seriously, I don't know why you don't have 3 times as many followers as you do on social media. You should. At It's Tera Time on the Twitter machine. That's where you go. And Tera, I know we are in the holiday season, and they say that the perfect gift does not exist. However, I saw something on Sunday after the Commanders game, Brian Robinson wearing the big hat. And I'm staring at DBro's bald head today without a hat, which is a rarity that we get the hatless DBro. And I saw the big hat, and I thought, that's it. If anybody can pull off the big hat, it's Derek Brown. Do you agree with that sentiment?
I agree. If you can pull it off, do it. I feel like I have a big head, so I don't know if a bigger hat would like just exacerbate that. But yeah, I am.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Hat. Does it make it look smaller? Does it make it look bigger? I don't know. But I saw that and I went, yep, because he was wearing it backwards. And I said, if I could get DBro to wear that hat on a YouTube show, then that would be a win. I don't know how much they cost yet, but DBro, if I find out that it's within the budget and I do purchase it, will you wear it here on the show?
I'm not above diving in any bit. So yeah, go ahead. Hat. Sign me up for the big hat. But dude, I think that honestly, you put the big hat on me and I'm going to look like Toad out of Mario Brothers. It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be definitely meme worthy.
Yeah, with a beard. So it's like homeless Toad or something like that. Yeah, he has nowhere to go. He's been kicked out of the Mario World universe. Something's gone wrong there. But let's get to the things that might go right here for your fantasy teams. And let's start with the sleeper waiver wire pickup of the week. Now, I want to talk about a player because I think he's still lower rostered than he should be in most leagues. On Sleeper, he is rostered pretty highly. He is up to 67%. So still available in almost 30% of leagues, which is absurd because even in 10-team leagues, he should be added. And that guy is Treylon Burks, who is the wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans. Burks is going to be that guy. And ironically, his first touchdown was a fumble recovery yesterday. It was a wacky little play. But look, if you're looking here ahead to Treylon Burks down the stretch here, yes, it's a tough matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles next week in those corners. But after that, you get Jacksonville, you get the Chargers, you get Houston, you get Dallas down the stretch here. And I'm telling you right now, Treylon Burks is a player that should be rostered. You should have him there. He's a player that is starting to get that attention of the passing game that really has struggled mightily this year. You didn't have Tannehill for a stretch. He's not 100% healthy, but you could see he is the go-to guy here. Back-to-back games of 111 yards, 70 yards there. So he's starting to put it together. That's what you want. If you look at the last 2 weeks, obviously, the touchdown was a little fluky here. That's fine. But I think you're in a spot with Treylon Burks where if he's still floating out there, you need to add him. That being said, we had a lot of injuries to the running back position yesterday. So we got to go and look at some players here that we might be able to add. So Tera, I want to start with you here. You are our guest. Who is number one on your list here in Week 13 to add at the RB position off the waiver wire?
For me, this was tough because I think all of these guys are, fairly even. These, 3 guys that are really getting thrust up into higher positions. But I'm going to go with Zonovan Knight as the guy that I am grabbing as my number 1 back. The reason is, I like what I saw. 14 carries, 69 yards, 3 receptions for 34 yards. The key there, the 3 receptions, because we do kind of have to remember that it is possible that we do see James Robinson next week. Mm-hmm. It's possible that this was maybe a situation where they just kind of sat him out and we're trying to save up his yardage because that pick is conditional. And so we kind of do have to temper our expectations. But I like that because when we look at Mike White, he only threw 28 passes, but 25 of those passes went to running backs. So I think there's a possibility here that even if it doesn't really shake out as him as being the exact lead back, if he can gain a stronghold as the receiving back in that offense, if this injury to Michael Carter is significant, I like where this could head for him as a rookie.
Yeah, our friend JJ Zacharyson had a great stat. I saw him tweet last week about Mike White, which is when he was starting last year. It was the highest percentage of passes to running backs of any other quarterback. And that's why we're also excited about Michael Carter going into this week at DFS. It did not work out. was a little upsetting, but it's okay. We're going to move on. Knight, by the way, is, not very highly rostered. It's a big fat zero right now. So you get him out off the waiver wire pretty easily. And like you're saying, it was a healthy scratch for James Robinson. We'll see what this week brings. Big matchup here against Minnesota. At a certain point, you have to put winning ahead of everything else. Let's put one running back ahead of everyone else for you, Derek Brown. Who is that name in week 13 you want to add?
I know Rams fans have not been too happy about my takes about Kyren Williams previously, but yes, he's number one on the list. And this comes down to, Joe, I've been shying away, staying away, running away from this backfield for multiple weeks. But a lot of this it's been a two-headed monster, a three-headed monster. We don't know what any of the volume is. And even in bad offenses, can we at least try to flex running backs out of bad offenses? Okay, sure. And that's why it leads me back to Kyren Williams. Last week, 14 touches, 60 total yards. He played 70% of the snaps. He got half the early down work and all of the passing down work. And if we're not even just talking about the volume out of this offense, which is going to be gross, Allen Robinson's now out, Cooper Kupp's out, Stafford probably doesn't come back. Really, you look at this depth chart, you're like, it's a bunch of practice squad guys. But even if we're trying to paint the rosier picture for Kyren Williams, the schedule's nice, Joe. Seattle, the Raiders, Green Bay. Need I go on? The Broncos, Chargers, Seattle again. These are good matchups. So as much as I would love to just kind of poo-poo Kyren Williams and be like, it's the Rams, blah, 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 and not want to talk about the guy, there are a lot of things to like that make him a number one.
Okay, so Williams is your number one. Who is your number two then, as you're looking forward?
My number two is going to be JaMycal Hasty. I bounce between, and I have no disagreement about Tera, but as far as picking a Bam Knight, I'm totally with that. He's my number three guy, but Hasty is my number two. And look, I know that the quotes have come out, and Travis Etienne says he's going to play, and his foot's okay, and he could have come back into the game. I'm taking all of that with a grain of salt because we just don't know. It takes one more headline to drop before, when you're listening to this, maybe that's already happened, and it says, oh, Travis Etienne's going to get more tests on his foot. We don't know at this point. So if I'm looking at JaMycal Hasty, yes, I want the guy in an improving Jacksonville Jaguars offense that's going to play, Detroit this week. Got 17 touches, almost 100 total yards. Yeah, I want that guy. I want that guy on my team.
Now, Hasty's on your list too, Tera. He is your number three. Hasty at this point, again, roster percentage, pretty low. Just 3% over on the sleeper machine. So Kyren Williams is at 44% rostered, so he's a little bit harder to get. JaMycal Hasty's free. What are your thoughts on Hasty and also Henderson, who was recently picked up too? Is that a guy that potentially people should be keeping an eye out for and just adding at least speculatively here down the stretch?
If you're in a deep league, yes, because I'm with DBro here. If this is a 1 week opportunity, and that's what I'm taking it as, because these running backs, they have these injuries, foot injuries, ankle injuries, and say, oh, I'm fine. Once you give it a day and that injury has some time to sit, it's a different story. We've seen it multiple times, like with Chuba Hubbard, where it turns into a 1 to 2 week absence. And I think if we're looking at a 1 week absence here, I like JaMycal Hasty as the guy over Darrell Henderson, just because I think it's going to take Darrell Henderson a little bit more time to get acclimated in this offense. I don't think it'll be a Jeff Wilson situation where you're obviously going into a situation where you know the system, you know the coach. Henderson has to get more comfortable. So I still think that, for the next week, maybe two, if Travis Etienne is out, it's JaMycal Hasty that's going to have the upside. If for some reason this becomes a long-term thing, that's where I see Darrell Henderson stepping up as the guy that profiles more to be the lead back.
All right, let's talk about spend here on these guys. So Hasty and Henderson, let's say they're both out there and available. DBro, in terms of budget, how would you appropriate funds for these guys?
I think some of this comes down to if you're must win, if you're looking at this as a 1 to 2 week rental where your team is at in contention or fighting for it. In a lot of scenarios, I'm 3 to 5% because you are only looking at the 1 week rental.
Okay.
So maybe I miss out on him, but I think you still can secure him in a lot of spots. As far as talking about JaMycal Hasty, Henderson, I'm not blowing any kind of fab on.
Okay.
I'll wait until after it runs, and if I get him, that's fine. Because I want to go back to Hasty just for a second. I think the coaching staff showed a lot of trust in him because Snoop Conner was active for this game. They easily could have involved him more in the running game and split the work between Hasty, but Hasty got all of the work.
Tara, how about you? Is that similar? You echo the sentiments there? I know Henderson is 50% roster on Sleeper, but are you somebody who would rather just like kind of let it all run and then go pick him up, or would you throw a buck or two just to, avoid that process and just kind of get him on the roster in case you wanted to just kind of have more control of the backfield overall?
Yeah, I might throw one if you've got the money to spend. Maybe you saved up and it's not going to be a big deal for you. But other than that, yeah, I'm with DBro. I would spend maybe 5 on JaMycal Hasty, but you wait it out and don't spend anything on Henderson. I don't think you're going to have to fight for him.
Yeah. All right. I want to get your take on Kyren Williams too, because look, basically you guys had the same 3 players here, just a different order. So I'll get DBro's take on Knight in a second, but I want to get your take, Tara, on Kyren Williams too. He is rostered in 44% of leagues. In terms of looking at the schedule, what's coming up for him, DBro makes a pretty good case. It's tough because the Rams offense, not good, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. The weapons are depleting at an alarming rate, that's for sure. I feel like the Rams season can be encapsulated in that moment where Sean McVay got hit in the face there on the sidelines. That kind of feels like the Rams season in one moment right there, where you're not even looking and all of a sudden just boom, somebody hit you in the side of the face with your helmet. So what do you think here Kyren Williams' real value is in free agency and fantasy?
Yeah, I could make the argument for Kyren Williams being the number 1 guy because, there's a lot of things going on with this offense. And unfortunately, the offensive line is terrible, so that gives him a knock. Akers is there, so that gives him a knock as well. And then Matt Stafford, we don't know 100%. He's described as week to week. That sounds like they have zero incentive to bring him back and risk his health. But on the other side, I've had no interest in this backfield whatsoever. I've been on the cut Cam Akers side. I stay on the cut Cam Akers side. I'm not yielding to adding Cam Akers. But if there is one running back that I have to invest in this offense, it's going to be Kyren Williams. And the reason is exactly what we said. First of all, he's getting a decent amount of carries. Snaps are good. He's got the pass catching upside, which is what you want in this Rams offense. You don't want to be the guy like Akers who's getting, the last time he saw any receptions was back in week 2. You just lack upside if you don't have that. So Kyren Williams has the upside to get to double-digit fantasy points. And I think as we kind of progress through and they've got that awesome upcoming schedule for running backs, I think he'll push ahead of Akers because the Rams need to see what they have in him. They need to understand that this is the guy that they can look at as someone who can potentially be a lead back heading into 2023. Or do they have to hit free agency? Do they have to try and figure out something in the draft, which they don't do very well? But yeah, I think there's value there.
It's hard to draft players when you have no picks.
When you have no picks,
that's a hard thing to do.
You trade them away because.
I mean, did they not think that was going to come around and bite them eventually? I mean, I understand it's like, living in the now and trying to win. I respect that, but I agree with you 100%, by the way. I think they are this is evaluation time for the Rams. So we're going to see a lot of these faces. I think you can evaluate Van Jefferson too, guys like that. We'll talk more about him later on too. Like, who are these guys that we have underneath this layer of high-paid superstars? We really don't know what else is underneath. That's certainly a scenario we need to understand. Real quick, DBro, give me your thoughts on Knight and anybody else that you think is worthy picking up at the RB position.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Knight. He's number 3 on my list. I liked him as a prospect coming out of college. We do saw, in college, we saw some pass catching upside from him. He had back-to-backs above 5% target seasons. So I think he can play some of the passing downs for the Jets. Although, again, we talked about it. Like, this backfield could just dissolve into anarchy. I mean, it could be James Robinson. It could be a little touch of Ty Johnson. We don't know. So I like Bam Knight at number 3, considering all the things that we do know at this point. You could list Ty Johnson on this list for the same reasons. And James Cook, I know we talked about him last week, staying ahead of the curve. If this Buffalo Bills backfield just decides to dissolve itself or condense onto 1 or 2 players, there is value to be had in one of the best offenses in the NFL.
All right. Real quick, Tara, anybody else at the RB position that kind of floats around for you worth adding?
Yeah, if you want to wait it out and just kind of take a stab at Ty Johnson after waivers run just to see, because again, the pass catching upside, we talked about Mike White. So there's a possibility there in deep leagues. And then I do like stashing James Cook because I think at this point, we understand it's going to be James Cook. They're not going with Nyheim Hines as this guy that's going to be the direct handcuff for Singletary.
All right, let's go and switch gears over to the wide receivers to add this week. And as a reminder, too, at the top, when I talked about Treylon Burks, the reason I brought him up is not just because of the talent and what he's got here and his role in the pass game in Tennessee, which is limited, but still there. He might be rostered in 67% of sleeper leagues, but in the expert consensus roster percentage, he's still just 43%. So just as a reminder, he might be out there in a lot of your leagues in a lot of places where you don't realize it. So you might want to go ahead and add them around. Also, another thing you might want to do is go ahead and join our contest too. We're giving away an Austin Ekeler autographed jersey, and that is going to wrap up Wednesday night. So you don't have a lot of time here. So go ahead right now, drop a 5-star review of the pod wherever you get your podcast. Go to Apple Podcasts. Say, I love the Fantasy Pros podcast. Tera Roberts is the best guest ever. Yada, yada, yada. That's what you do. You put it in there. You screenshot that bad boy. You go to fantasypros.com/contest and you enter to win. And remember, that's one entry. But if you want more entries for the Austin Ekeler jersey, you go and you follow us on social media, on the TikTok, on the Twitter machine, on the Instagram. That's 4 total entries you can get for the Austin Ekeler jersey. It's a present for yourself, for the holidays, or for somebody else. If you don't like the Chargers, there you go. It's a perfect world. All right, let's get to the wide receivers here. Let's start with you here, DBro. Who is your number 1 wide receiver ad for Week 13?
It's going to be Zay Jones. Maybe I'm just prisoner of the moment right now, but I mean, 38% rostered on Sleeper. I wrote it up in the primer, and I picked the wrong Jones, apparently. But I was like, the Baltimore Ravens have gotten better in the slot. It's where you beat them is on the perimeter, and Zay Jones made them pay. 37% target share. Dude racked up 11 receptions and 145 receiving yards. Like, wow. Tip of the cap. Like, all this volume finally came to fruition for Zay Jones that we've been seeing on and off all season. And he makes the top of the list here, Joe, because we're looking at flex plays. We're looking at people like, can I pluck you off of the waiver wire and drop you into the lineup?
It's not an accident that it happened when ATN got hurt. Let's be honest, too. I think if we're talking about what's the key to unlocking Zay Jones, making good on all that volume, well, it's Travis Etienne being out of the equation. So now we're forcing our hand a little bit. We might have to force our hand to Marvin Jones in some spots. You know, that big revenge game against the Lions coming up. Oh, God, the revenge. Enough with revenge games, everybody. Seriously.
Zay Jones makes the top of the list, though, Joe, because not only do they get the Lions, they get the Titans right after that. 2 top 12 teams versus wide receivers. So got to be the guy to pick up for me.
38% roster there. How much would you spend on him just to get a clarity?
I don't think it's going to take. I mean, he's been sitting out on waiver wires the entire
for $5,
season.
I bet you could pick him up.
I was like, 2, 1. I mean, legit. Like, if he's out there at this point, if nobody gives a care. Like, nobody cares about Zay Jones, so it's not going to cost you much.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. All right, let's go to you, Tara. Who's your number 1 wide receiver you want to add in free agency this week?
It was painful for me not to say Zay Jones as my number 1 because I think at this point I might qualify as a Zay Jones truther. That's weird to say, but my number 1 receiver is Van Jefferson. Yeah, I'm going back to the Rams offense that we've just, beat down over the course of, a month here. But the thing is that Allen Robinson is done, unfortunately. And I cannot knock a wide receiver 1, and that is a wide receiver 1 for a team. It may be a wide receiver 1 without Matt Stafford, but he is in fact going to be the wide receiver 1, and we have seen him have success in the past. So I do have faith in the talent of Van Jefferson. We do have to temper expectations. Don't go out there thinking that this is going to be a league winner situation. He caught 3 of 7 targets for 29 yards and a touchdown. There's not going to be a lot of upside with Bryce Perkins at the helm, but he is a legitimate threat. So I do want to look at him and, if you have to, I think that he's someone who can be a fine flex option moving forward.
I was actually surprised he was only 7% rostered on Sleeper. I thought it would have been higher over the last couple of weeks, especially after the Cooper Kupp injury. I thought, maybe we get into the 20s or something with Jefferson. But look, Jefferson's shown you flashes before, and the coaching staff's always liked him too. So another guy that's pretty low on the totem pole. Now, look. Let's get back to the truth you want to tell about Zay Jones, because I know he's your number 2 player. So let's talk about Zay Jones and what your expectations are, because, look, at a certain point, I think we're all thinking that Trevor Lawrence is going to continue to take steps forward. I think yesterday was a big step in confidence, too. When you have a drive like that, that's the kind of drive that builds a young quarterback's self-esteem and confidence level at this NFL spot. And I think that's a very important thing. So what are your thoughts on Zay Jones here, not only this week, but going forward as well?
Yeah, I like the direction for Trevor Lawrence. And, it doesn't hurt that the Jacksonville defense isn't particularly strong. So they have to push for high volume to keep up with these other teams that they're playing. They've got those 2 pass-friendly matchups coming up. So I like the wide receiver 2 in a very high pass volume team. And, DBro talked about those two upcoming matchups against Detroit and Tennessee. And then it gets ugly in the playoff schedule. But the thing here is I don't think that's a bad thing for Zay Jones. So that's a bad thing for Christian Kirk. This is an opportunity where in these difficult matchups against Dallas, the New York Jets, Houston, where we've got Sauce Gardner, we've got Trayvon Diggs that can sit here and they can lock down Christian Kirk, and it opens up opportunities for Zay Jones. So I think we can realistically see multiple double-digit games moving forward from him in these great matchups with Detroit and Tennessee, and then in these matchups where he's going to get the opportunity to get the softer coverage.
It's a great point. That's what you're looking for. And certainly, if we don't have ETN, there's a lot more opportunity for the passing game, just generally speaking, which is good. I think it's time to let loose if you're Trevor Lawrence a little bit. It's time. Let's go. It's year 2. All right, let's get to the number 2 guy for you, Derek Brown, wide receiver. Who is it in week 13?
I know everybody's expecting me to say Elijah Moore here. That's great. That's fine. He did fill the box score, 64 yards of receiving touchdown, but it's not the name that I'm going with if you're looking for a jet here, which you're probably not, but still, there's fantasy goodness to be had. Only rostered in 19% of sleeper leagues is Cory Davis. He ran more routes, played more snaps, and commanded more targets than Elijah Moore. The fact of it is, he didn't make good on any of it. And it's not to say that he can't. Like with Cory Davis, I'm going to chase the snaps, the routes, and the targets over going with flash in the pan. Like Elijah Moore wasn't even a full-time player last week. So you marry Cory Davis first week back. He's already thrown back into full-time status over Elijah Moore, and the upcoming matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, who are 6th in fantasy points allowed, 7th in yards per reception allowed to wide receivers. Yeah, I think Cory Davis is a decent flex moving forward, at least this week.
All right, Tara, you're bringing back one of our favorites here in the show. Skyy Moore is your number 3 person here. So let's talk about him. Cory Davis, by the way, 19% rostered on Sleeper. Skyy Moore, just 5% rostered. So that was a player that we all had very high hopes for, and then eventually we all just said, okay, it's just time to move on. We have to let it go. And here we are. We're in a spot here where maybe a speculative add down the stretch with some of these injuries that they've had here. Kadarius Toney out, Mecole Hardman out. I know it was kind of a lackluster performance there for the Chiefs offense, but I don't expect that every week. I think this was the Rams' last breath, so to speak, and they just spent it all in this game. And now it's over. And I think the Chiefs withstood that, to be honest. And not every game is going to be pretty. But what do you think here about Skyy Moore and whether or not he's worth rostering?
It's crazy. The expectations that we had and then how we were let down in the beginning of the season was insane. But what I love right here is that I think he's having a mini rookie late half breakout. We've got 2 weeks in a row, 5 receptions on 6 targets. I like the consistency. The snap count is not, super high, unfortunately, but I like the fact that he's being very efficient with how he's being utilized on the field. Kind of maybe similar to Treylon Burks, who I don't have his snap counts for yesterday's game, but prior to that was sitting around the 50% range, even though he was getting more opportunities, more passes. So I'm okay with these rookies here that maybe aren't getting the higher snap counts, but are getting more opportunities through the air with targets and the routes that they're running. And while obviously I'm not talking about a kind of breakout in terms of like a Christian Watson or Garrett Wilson kind of breakout situation, but I don't think that we should ignore it, because it's very possible that even with a tough upcoming schedule, you've got Patrick Mahomes, we've got Mecole Hardman on IR, as you mentioned. It's possible that he can sit here and he can carve out a little role that makes him have some good value. And we know he's a dynamic player. So at some point there could be a nice breakout performance in your, fantasy playoffs. And if you have the room to roster him, you want to be on top of that.
67% of the snaps for Treylon Burks this week to answer that question there. So
moving on
pretty
up.
Good for a team that runs the football as much as they do. By the way, I just saw this breaking news, of course, on my Playbook app, because that's where I get all of my news. Doug Peterson says ATN was cleared to return versus the Ravens, but apparently did not go back in. So maybe caution. We'll see what that means. But again, it's not a break the bank kind of week at running back anyway. I would play it safe, everybody. Just go back into, cover yourself. A little JaMycal Hasty. Just kind of get some insurance, because it's not like Etienne hasn't had foot issues before. And his style of running, I forget which person put this out there, but it was a fascinating thing that I saw in the summertime about when right in the training camp. DBro, I don't know if you saw this one, but they were showing, the way Travis Etienne runs and the way he plants his feet, that's his style of running is going to lend itself to those plantar fascia kind of injuries. And I thought that was really fascinating. And they were showing him versus another style of runner, and you see the way he, his feet move. And I thought that was really fascinating. So just something long-term to consider, everybody. Again, the little tiny pieces of information. Let's get to DBro's third guy. Who you have on the wide receiver list?
It's going to be Isaiah McKenzie. He's only rostered in 34% of sleeper leagues, and going to buy into the cheapest piece of the probably arguably top 2, top 3 offense in the NFL. Yeah. I know the upcoming matchups are not fantastic against the Patriots, the Jets, and the Dolphins, but if you're Josh Allen, do you want to throw against those outside corners for the Patriots? No. I'd much rather pick on Miles Bryant. Do you want to throw against Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed? No. I'd rather pick on Michael Carter. So while the upcoming matchups are not fantastic, McKenzie's coming off a big game. His snaps bounce back to 73%, and the easier matchups for the Bills' passing attack moving forward are via the slot, so he's definitely worth the pickup.
All right, let's go to another one for you, Tara. Who is the last guy on your list at wide receiver for Week 13?
It is Nico Collins. I want so much more for Nico Collins because
we all do.
He's asserted himself as the wide receiver 1 of the Texans offense. I feel comfortable saying that right now, unfortunately for Brandon Cooks. But I mean, the targets have been up. The target share is solid. Collins caught 6 of 9 targets for 44 yards on Sunday. And unfortunately, that's just the best that we can get out of him. Within that offense for the Texans, unfortunately, there's a solid floor there that he has, a solid 10 fantasy point floor. He just doesn't have the upside to get above 20. So that's why he's number 4. If this was a different situation, if we had just a smidgen of better performance out of the quarterback position, I would bump him up so much. But unfortunately, I can't. The good news is the Texans' schedule coming up is pass friendly. So maybe there will be a little bit of an uptick there. But I like rostering and stashing Nico Collins.
Well, I got good news for you because next year he's going to have Bryce Young. So that's going to be a good positive thing. We're going to go forward there. He's going to be the new QB, and maybe Nico Collins going forward in those keeper dynasty leagues actually becomes a thing. Stranger things have happened. All right, so there you have it. Nico Collins, by the way, DBro, 34% rostered, also on your list, correct?
He is my number 4 guy, and it's just chasing volume. I mean, Tara made a bunch of great points about Nico Collins, and volume is king in fantasy. There's ugly spots for it. Nico Collins is one of them. The Nico Collins stat lines on a weekly basis kind of remind me of not this year or the breakout Michael Pittman, but kind of rookie season when we saw flashes Pittman. And with Collins, if he's going to get these intermediate targets, I mean,
and flashes Pittman, was that with Brissett, if memory serves?
Yep.
Okay.
Memory serves me right. Yeah, I think so.
I think so. We'd have to go back and check the stats, but I want to say it was it. Tara will tell us for sure. She's smarter than us.
I try, guys, but I don't know.
Go ahead, D. What else you got here? Anything else there?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're going to look at Collins as at least as in the flex conversation, the matchup this week against the Cleveland Browns is going to be fantastic. I mean, we know that Deshaun Watson's going to come in there fired up, going to want to put up points, probably going to get the Texans passing late. And as well as the cornerbacks for the Browns, they're allowing the 7th most fantasy points perimeter wide receivers this year.
All right. DBro, any other names at wide receiver worthy for you?
No, I mean, there's a lot of guys we've kind of kicked the can on. I think Skyy Moore in deeper leagues like Tara was talking about. I mean, you could always interest me in Skyy Moore. I don't know what else Skyy Moore has to do to get into Andy Reid's good graces. Like, just give the man snaps.
The sleeper roster percentage of some of these players, too, that we've been, as DBro said, kicking the can on are high because, that's where the sharper people are playing. But if you look at the ECR roster percentage of guys like Paris Campbell, still hovering around 53%.
It's crazy.
Donovan Peoples-Jones at 46%. I mean, come on. Let's be honest here. Those guys should not be still floating around. Elijah Moore, by the way, just 29% roster too in the ECR. So there's a lot of help still out there to be had. And please plan ahead for Week 14. Do that now. You should be looking, all of you. Everyone, listen to Uncle Joe when I tell you. You need to look ahead to Week 14. Make adjustments now. Don't wait to the last minute because then everyone's going to be chasing the same players. It's the worst. Proactive, not reactive. All right, I'm going to react to something here, which is it's a public apology to Derek Brown because last week when we got to the quarterbacks, his recommendation, which seemed totally unnecessary to me with the depth at quarterback, that Mac Jones was the guy he was recommending. Well, although the Patriots did not get the victory, Mac Jones threw for 578 million yards, and I will give you the props there on that one, my friend. You nailed the Mac Jones. I didn't see that coming. Didn't think we get to that level, but good job. So who's going to dazzle us in Week 13 here, Derek Brown?
Well, that's QB7 for you, Mac Jones. Thank you very much, Joe. We're going to go back to the well, man. We just saw this guy perform well, and he gets the same secondary that Mac Jones just torched.
Well, they're not good.
We're going to go to Mike White, baby. Minnesota, 7th highest success rate per dropback, 13th in EPA, and 8th in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. We saw Mike White throw a ton last week. He's got the skill players around him. I just went and told you to pick up Cory Davis. So, yeah, I like the quarterback that he's tied to for the week.
All right, there you go. 8% rostered Mike White. I picked him up speculatively last week after the whole stuff going on there with Zach Wilson. I just had a feeling. I talked about it on the show here. Remember? Because in some of those leagues where you have like rolling waivers, you can pick them up. You don't have to wait. And I was like, I'm just going to pick this guy up right now. I'm just going to see what happens because I got a bad feeling about the Zach Wilson thing or a good feeling that it's going to move. Jaquan Brisker was out yesterday. The Bears D is not good. They've already jettisoned pieces like Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith. So Mike White looked very good yesterday, as I thought he would. I agree. It's a good matchup in Minnesota, but I am just a little worried here that we're riding a litll
Are we doing
too
this
close
again,
to the
Joe?
sun.
Are we doing this again?
I might have to do it too.
Feels like we're doing this again, Joe.
Okay. The wings of Icarus, the wings are starting to melt a little bit here.
Okay.
Jets D's real good. Always give respect to the Jets D, but we'll see. All right,
we'll catch up on this next week. Okay. Deja vu, Joe. Deja vu.
Tara, give me the quarterback you're looking at week 13. You could stream if you need one.
Well, before I dive into mine, I've got your back, DBro, because I too would have selected Mike White as my guy.
Thank you. Speak to this man.
Greatest quarterback in the history of the planet, Mike White, everybody.
And I am kicking myself because I picked him up in a Superflex league and did not have the guts to start him. And
well, the Superflex league I was talking about, I started Mac Jones over him in my second
spot. You did good.
So I had
look at that, Joe.
Well, in all fairness, it was Cousins Jones or Mike White. Those were my options. So I was like, look, but yes, that's right.
Poo-poo the take on the show. Start him in closed quarters. People don't know about it, but I appreciate you coming true.
What happens behind closed doors? I mean, that's nobody's business.
Unless you bring it up and talk about it on the show.
Well, that's fine. Look, desperate times are desperate measures here. You know, like, look, man, I was saying going into the season, Superflex was ugly this year, and it was going to only get uglier, and it did. And I'm telling you, like that the days of the safe Phillip Rivers quarterback, Matt Ryan guys, those days are gone. Where you could just I'll just take a couple of these
Matthew Stafford
pocket passers. Yeah, those guys don't exist anymore. They're all headed towards the end, or they're already gone. Oof. And what you're left with is a bunch of guys who really can't play the position. It's a scary time in Superflex leagues. But Tara, since Mike White wasn't available. Yes. Give me a guy that you want to stream at QB.
If you can't go with Mike White, I'm streaming Jared Goff as an alternative. Yes.
There you go.
It's the matchup. Matchup against Jacksonville is good. So if you have to, but also if you want to, you could also, if you're in a super deep league, you could also grab Sam Darnold. I did want to do an honorable mention for him because after the bye week, good situation for him. Seattle, Pittsburgh, Detroit. So if you're deep and you need to get ahead, like Joe was saying, for week 14, there could be something there.
You're going to laugh. I also on that same roster, this is in the Superflex championship league there. I've also got Sam Darnold, who I speculatively had a couple weeks ago. Once I saw Baker Mayfield was back, I was like, well, that's enough for me to go add Sam Darnold now for nothing. Just to see what's going on. Now I have too many quarterbacks and I don't have enough spots to play empty. So now what do I do?
That's a great problem to have in Superflex.
White, Mac Jones, and Sam Darnold. Oh, what's a boy to do?
Can you smush them all together into one super quarterback?
And make one good quarterback? No, I don't think you can.
Doesn't work that way?
Maybe. Okay. All right, let's get to the tight end possession. By the way, Jared Goff, 46% rostered. Sam Darnold, I believe much less. I will double check on that.
Just taking a wild guess. It's going to be lower.
The exact number is not as much.
-3.
No, if you had to guess, what do you think it is? I mean, there's enough super flexes. Go ahead, D. Take a wild guess. What's Sam Darnold's roster percentage on Sleeper?
5%.
6.
4.
Okay.
I was going to go 6.
Right, you guys are both in the neighborhood. There you go. Okay, tight end position. Tara, who is the tight end you want to add this week?
Again, I would prefer the guy that DBro is going to talk about, but but I might be mildly in on Tyler Conklin. And it's tough to say because tight end has been just an absolute wasteland. I mean, just horrible. But, what we're looking at here is we talked about this matchup for the Jets, the upcoming matchup against Minnesota, and it's very possible that they push more pass volume, and I could see that benefit Tyler Conklin. So if you need to take a stab, this week's performance wasn't anything special, but it existed. So it could get an uptick against Minnesota.
I am all for the evolution of fantasy. I think we should always be looking. I was always 10 years ago pushing for Superflex. I'm like, why are we devaluing quarterback? With guys with 250 points in the waiver wire, this is stupid. We should be playing more quarterbacks, making it harder for everybody. At this point with tight end, after the last 2 years, I think it's time to eliminate tight end and go to the second flex. Just do it. Let's just do it. And you can still have Kelsey. You can still have Andrews. You can go, but you don't have to have a tight end because some offenses nowadays just don't use them at all. And it's just getting more and more of a thing here as we go forward. So why are we beating our heads against the wall? Let's evolve. Derek Brown, before we can evolve, we still have tight ends to play. So who is your guy at tight end you want to roster this week?
Man, I'm so glad Tara brought up Tyler Conklin. I mean, there's Cory Davis love on the pod. There's Tyler Conklin love on the pod.
It's all Jets pod. It's gangrene. Go gangrene.
It's probably going to be a good week for Mike White, and that's a good week next week for me. Anyway, go ahead. Foster Moreau is the guy that I got to bring up here. I mean, every down tight end for the Raiders. The matchup this week is fantastic. You get a Chargers defense allowing the third most receiving yards, seventh most fantasy points, and the most yards per reception in the entire NFL to tight ends. Foster Moreau, I mean, at this point, for tight ends, we're looking at, it's mostly matchup-based streaming, because all of these guys that are out there on the tight end waiver wire that you could possibly pick up at this point of the season, you could poke holes in every one of their resumes. It's like, oh, well, he was good, but then he sucked. Oh, he was good, but then he sucked. Oh, he sucks now.
Right. It's all about touchdown equity. Let's be honest. You get your tight end,
matchups.
I'll catch a touchdown, you're a tight
touchdowns.
That's it. Yeah. So, and look, Moreau's got 2 out of the last 3 weeks with them. Jawan Johnson, another guy we talked about a ton. I mean, these are the guys that are doing it. Conklin's interesting, though. Conklin definitely, I know he only had the 3 targets, but he did catch all 3 for 50 yards. And I think they were showing, I think it was the first drive of the game where Mike White had more completed passes in the first drive than Zach Wilson had in the whole week before. That was an amazing stat. I was like, oh, God. And they just kept doing it to him the entire game. And I was just like, man, this is like, kind of felt bad for the kids, sort of, kind of. And then I remembered he had a signing bonus, and then I didn't feel as bad.
Did you see Joe? Did you see the cutaways, or the pictures of him on the side? He looked like King Joffrey getting rained on. He's like,
same. Yeah, it was. I couldn't tell if it was the same face that Anakin Skywalker makes right before he goes into the Jedi elementary school. I feel like it was that, or the same face that I made when they told me we were out of pumpkin pie. There was no more pie left. Same face.
Both.
That's the face.
Bit of both.
Joe Pieces PS17. There's the Twitter machine. All right, let's go to the D's of the week. DBro, who's the D for you this week?
Seattle Seahawks. This just comes down to matchups.
I support this message. Let's go.
They this week they get to face Bryce Perkins, first of his name, author of 4.3 yards per attempt. It's gonna be nice. They're only out there rostered in 17% of sleeper leagues. Go pick them up. It's not going to take much. Even if you have to put $2 on them, these outside corners for Seattle is going to feast against these practice squad wide receivers, and Bryce Perkins is just going to be throwing YOLO balls into their hands.
Nobody wants to hear this, but I talk about them almost every week on the TV show on Sundays, where you're looking for a cheap defense. It's always the Seattle Seahawks every week, and they're the 11th ranked fantasy defense. Time. The Commanders are another one too. But like, Seattle is going to give up points, but they're opportunistic. They create turnovers. They get to the quarterback. They do things that get you fantasy points. I think that's something to keep in mind. That's what you're looking for. It's a great matchup against the Rams too. Tara, who is your defense that you're looking for in Week 13?
For me, it is Cleveland against Houston. I think we kind of got into a similar situation of whether or not it's, Davis Mills bench for the rest of the year and they're going with Kyle Allen for the rest of the season. Either way, this is not a good situation. There's going to be interceptions. There's going to be low yardage. And, unfortunately for Dameon Pierce, you can just literally just stop him, stack the box because these quarterbacks can't throw on you. So, Cleveland's defense hasn't been spectacular, but they are very low rostered and it is a good opportunity.
Low rostered indeed, 3%. Seattle Seahawks, 17%. Tara, is this the Houston Texans Super Bowl here? You know, Deshaun Watson coming into town. Like, is this the game that they get up for? I mean, we saw it a couple weeks ago where they got up to play the Eagles.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of, it's been not very good since. But is there a universe here in the script where all of a sudden this game becomes far more interesting and entertaining than we realize? I'm the fantasy Loki, so I always like to ask these questions.
I don't think so. I don't think so, man. This is just, it's going to be a sad game. I'm interested to see how Deshaun Watson is going to.
Well, he hasn't played in a year and a half.
Yeah, this is.
It looks pretty terrible in the preseason too. Just throwing that out there.
Let's talk about that, D. Like, is there a world here where he's super flat and the Texans are just, super ramped up and that crowd super ramped up? And I don't know. I like when things go sideways. It's fun to watch. All right, let's go to the next bit here. For those of you who are not using free agent budget, for those of you who are just using those good old-fashioned waivers, Derek Brown, give me your top 5 here that you want to add in the order for Week 13.
Was that a shot? Do you think that people in the South don't believe in fab?
We don't like your fab. We don't care for that kind of stuff. We like the old-fashioned way. We like to run the waivers.
Yeah,
we run the waivers around these parts. You take your fab and you go up north, Yankee. That's what I want you to do.
You know what?
You go up north. You stay up north with your free agent budget, and you're getting whatever free agent you want. I don't care for that. There's rules here. That's what we got.
I'm speechless right now.
I can't wait to get you that big hat. When Derek Brown
Tara,
on Christmas,
I apologize.
Christmas morning, when Derek Brown opens up the box and it's the big giant hat. I gotta see how much.
The only question is, can they get the box in the front door? Like, or you have to take the door off the hinge?
Care.
Like, I needed some scope on the size of that because I really didn't get a good scale on how big that truly was.
I don't know, but I'm while you give everybody your picks here, I'm gonna look and see.
Are you Googling the hat company?
I'm Googling the big hat.
Oh God, nice. Great, thanks. Oh, why is this my life? All right,
you have no idea how much I'm willing to spend potentially.
I know. That's why people think this is a bit. But I do believe that you're just gonna text me tomorrow and say I ordered it.
Forget bonuses. We're going to pay you with a big hat at the end of the year. That's where you're going to
go. I need to. All right. I'm pulling up Slack right now while we're doing this.
Come on.
All right, fine. I'm just trying to filibuster so you go away from doing what you're doing. All right. My number 1 guy is Kyren Williams. Number 2 is JaMycal Hasty. Number 3 is going to be Zay Jones. Bam Knight makes it in at 4. And rounding out the top 5, Cory Davis.
You're going to be upset because it's not as expensive as you would hope it would.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Man. It's good times.
Merry Christmas.
It's going to be great. I don't know what the shipping is, but we haven't gotten there. Tara, give me your top 5 waiver-wire ads for Week 13.
For me, I feel more comfortable with the wide receivers. So my top 5, it is Van Jefferson, Zay Jones, and we go to running backs with Zonovan Knight, Kyren Williams, and Skyy Moore.
DBro, what's your hat size? Make sure you tell me in the Slack chat after. I want it to fit right.
I'll send it right over, Joe.
Because if you don't, I'm just gonna guess, or I'm gonna
No. Fine. You win. I'll send it. I'll send it.
All right. There you go. I always win at the end. Let's go to keeper drop here. Some players that may or may not have high roster percentages that maybe it's time to get rid of, or maybe you want to keep them around. Kenyon Drake, 64% roster. Derek Brown, you want to keep or drop him?
Bye. Bye-bye.
Tera Roberts, you done with Kenyon Drake? 64% rostered on the sleeper rack.
We can cut.
Okay, cut Kenyon Drake. James Robinson, 69% roster. Tara, this one's more complicated. So do you want to keep him? Healthy and active yesterday was something everybody just kind of looked at and went, what? And then you have the injury to Michael Carter. So now we're in kind of a weird place here. What do you think? You still holding on to James Robinson?
I'm holding on. They want to be a run-heavy team. They're not going to push high volume. So there's opportunity for any of those backs when Michael Carter is out.
Same deal for you. You want to hold James Robinson? No. Nope. Derek Brown's done. Why?
I've been out. When you said his roster,
I know you've been out, but now I want to know if I can pull you back in.
No, you can't get me back in. That was going to be the next punchline. It's like, no, and I'm not coming back in. No, I'm out. I'm staying out. I'm fine being out. James Robinson, I don't even know if he's fully healthy at this point. So him being a healthy and active, we could try to poke up whatever kind of pins and put whatever we want in that and try to tell ourselves great stories about it. It still equals not good. And at this point of the season, I could craft really easy narratives for you and tell you that Bam Knight or Ty Johnson are the more effective runners. So, nothing. No. Bye-bye, James Robinson.
All right, for those maybe still carrying the torch, even in single QB leagues, for Russell Wilson, 64% rostered, I think it's finally time for us to, let it go. Don't you think, DBro?
I want to throw this back at you, Joe. If you got pushed against it, who would you roster in a shallow superflex league? Russell Wilson or Mike White?
Oh, Mike White.
Yeah,
I got zero hesitation.
But
Mike
some
White.
people might think that's crazy, and I'm like, it's really
not crazy.
not.
No, what's crazy
really
is continuing to put Russell Wilson out there.
Yeah.
Who, he hasn't thrown for more than one touchdown in a game since week 4. And he's had more games here with 0 than he has with multiple touchdowns because he's got 1, 2, 3. I mean, it is as bad as it gets. Russell Wilson, are you done too, Tara, with Russell Wilson? Is it time? Just cut him?
I've been done. Yeah, in one QB, I've been done. Just because even at his best, he doesn't offer the upside. Like, if you give me Daniel Jones in a good matchup or say Russell Wilson, there's no hesitation. There's Daniel Jones in the good matchup because I know he can get me over 20 fantasy points. And I don't have faith that Russell Wilson can do that anymore. We've seen, 2 good matchups for, Las Vegas and Carolina. He couldn't thrive in either one of those. This is bad. I don't see it changing.
No, I don't either. And I got to tell you, I just in those deeper single quarterback leagues too, where people are holding on to Russell Wilson, because I take these questions all the time in our Discord. They say, look, I'm streaming this guy, I'm holding on to Wilson. Look, it's done. It's over. Let's move on. You can't beat Carolina. Then what can you do at the end of the day? All right, let's get to our Discord question from our listener mailbag. And of course, it's free to join, fantasypros.com/chat. So go do that. But premium subscribers get access to stages, AMAs, and a whole lot more. And today we've got a question from Down Bad Colts Yanks fan. It's an interesting amalgamation of fandoms there. Everybody loves the Yankees and the Colts. That's a very popular combination. The question is a very simple one, folks. Can I drop A.J. Dillon now? That's the question. So question for you, Tera Roberts. Can I drop A.J. Dillon now?
Oh man, it depends on your league size. It depends on your roster construction, because at the end of the day, he is a handcuffed Aaron Jones, and that's a very, it's a profitable position in the Green Bay offense. But I
don't know why you want to. He had a touchdown last night.
Exactly.
I think this is a hard no.
Right. I was like a cut before and okay, but what if you got to hold on right now?
The other side of this coin is what if it's a
Jordan Love?
Right? That's my point. What if it's a Jordan Love led offense? Do we really? We that interested?
Look, down bad. This is the worst time to drop A.J. Dillon. You might have you might have held on long enough where the broken clock has come back around and you're right again.
You did. Like the cut was like a month ago.
It was right in week 1, and it's been wrong ever since. And now is not the time to drop A.J. Dillon. No. Especially for the guys that are out there on the waiver wire right now. Tera Roberts, it's always a joy to have you on the program. We're so grateful to have you here as part of our Fantasy Pros crew. Follow her on the Twitter machine at It's Tera Time. Go check out our contest, fantasypros.com/contest. Only a couple days left for that Austin Eckler jersey. Go get that right away. I'm going to go order a big giant hat for Derek Brown. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Tera and DBro, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. Hat time.